I'd hire them on the spot. Like they're like, yeah, it's invaluable to be able to be able to throw the baseball in the backyard with my son. What's the price tag on that? What's the price tag of being able to finish a marathon that you've been training for? Right? Invaluable. That's the thing. So for that, I can't put a price tag on that but for traditional PT, where you're getting treated by aides or assistants, it's been PT, it's just getting out of pain, maybe a copay.
Hey, welcome back to the Dave Kittle Show. Today we have my colleague, buddy, and return guest, Ben Bagge, back on the show, CEO of ProKinetics, and also part of clinical marketer over there with Jordan Mather. And Ben, I pitched this to you that I was having a challenge with one of my full-time physical therapists. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you might want to jump over to YouTube whenever you're able to, because I'm going to screen share a redacted spreadsheet of the therapist's performance in terms of visits and plans of care, and kind of like if that's acceptable or not, or like did people complete their plan of care or not. And so I had reached out to Dr. Ben Bagge because he's got a practice that's cash practice in San Diego and in Oakland and Des Moines, and you guys deal with this all the time. So first of all, Ben, welcome back on the show.
Yeah, no, good to be back. I think this is our fourth episode, I think. So it's good to be back.
Something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to be back. So
yeah,
it's not just.
I just like pitch you a topic. Like I know you're going to be extremely comfortable and savvy with reviewing it. So great to have you back on.
Yeah, let's do it back.
Awesome. So do you have a ton of therapists that anytime you have a new therapist that comes in, doesn't matter if they're new grad, doesn't matter if they're seasoned, but our style of practices, we do a little bit of out-of-network billing and self-pay. You're 100% self-pay. Regardless of that, we are charging out of pocket at a higher rate than the network copays. And so it takes typically a little bit more coaching and training and mentorship and coaching of therapists in terms of how to perform arguably a different or a better evaluation, plus allowing some time to have the buy-in to kind of talk about what do they care about and their results that they're looking for, and what are their expectations, and also what's the North Star, how can we get them there, and then how long is that going to take? How many days, weeks, how many visits, what type of package or whatever is that going to take to get them there? And so right off the bat, so I had sent this to you a little while ago. We were going back and forth about scheduling. So I had sent this to you. Again, if you're listening, you'll probably want to come back to this episode and check it out on YouTube. And so this is just one example of how I was tracking one of my therapists and looking at their ongoing visit numbers versus this was like kind of per patient, again, redacted. And when I'm, historically when I was treating patients, not that like, I know not every therapist is going to be as good and as great as me or Ben in terms of like the practice owner, but I was typically around like 16 visits per plan of care. Again, maybe a little bit more visits because of the convenience of going to people's homes. Now we're doing a little bit of brick and mortar as well. And so maybe brick and mortar has maybe 10 to 13 visits per plan of care, depending on where you're located and how great your therapists are and the rapport built and all that. But anyway, this is a snapshot. This is a redacted screen grab here of a spreadsheet. And of course, there's some dynamics here of patients traveling, busy with work. We're in New York City, so there's people that travel and they're busy. This therapist actually had 2 patients pass away. So obviously that will obviously stop their plan of care. Unfortunately, that's just life and that just happens. The reason why I sent this over to Ben and I wanted to share this with you guys is because looking at this spreadsheet, for me, it was like a little bit of signaling, and then it was like kind of a cluster of like, what is going on here? Therapists earlier when they started doing full plans of care. Now, some of these numbers are bigger because they're like ongoing. Maybe it's a neurological patient that has orthopedic issues, and some of these visit numbers might be a little larger than you might see at some other practices. And Ben, if you have any questions, we can unpack it. But I wanted to just share this with you and get your thoughts on, like, I know you've seen this before because I sent it over, but what are your thoughts? Like, if you had a therapist like this, if you had a situation where like they were doing great with their plans of care, they were getting results, they were having patients come back in, the therapeutic experience, all of that, and listen, we're more deep, 1 visit, 2 visit, 3 visit here, 6 visits, 3 visits. What are your initial thoughts or takeaways? Maybe you start with questions. Maybe, what do you go from here when you first see this, if you're tracking this with one or more of your therapists?
Yeah, so I just simply sit down with them and like ask them, like, what do they feel is like going on? I'd like highlight like positive, like, hey, early on, you can see in the above this screenshot that there's 18, there's 10, there's 11, there's 23, there's 25, there's a 65. That's something too. I'd potentially take out the 65 and see what happens to the data with that, because that's a big outlier.
Yep.
Right. But you don't want to like, get confused, because then you can be like, hey, I'm going to throw out the 3, but just, that's one thing I do is like, if I see a
Right.
big outlier, like I want to also see what that looks like without it. But I just highlight like, hey, what do they feel was the difference between those patients versus the ones recently? And a question I had for you, Dave, is how long has this PT been with you for?
Originally, they started in August of last year. Part of the challenge was that they were away throughout the holidays for 6 weeks. So it's kind of like a long time away.
Yeah.
And so again, that could potentially factor into it. But right now, at the time of this recording, they've been with us for a full year.
Okay. All right. So technically a full year with 6 weeks out, it's like closer, they've been working for 10 weeks. We see something with our clinicians that they start out really strong. Like the first like month or two, they absolutely crush it with conversions, painfuls, and then they go through this lull. They usually don't go through a lull like this late on. It's usually like between the 4 to 8 month mark is where we just see like conversions drop. They start getting away from things that are working, or they start getting in their own heads as well. So we do see a little bit of a lull. People crush out of the gate, and then there's a lull. So that could be a little bit of what's going on here. But long story short, I would just get their insight. Like, hey, here's the data. I want to make sure I'm supporting you. What's the difference between these patients versus the patients more recently? What do you feel is like going on? And they'll give you insight. Then you're not attacking. Be like, hey, this is what the data is showing me, but I know there's probably more to the story that I'm not seeing, right? These are just numbers. There's always other things that I can't see, and I just wanted to come to you to see what your insight is on the situation, right? So then you're not attacking them. They feel like you're like trying to gain more information to make an educated decision. You're not blaming them or anything like that. You just generally want to see what's going on with it. And that's how I usually start the conversations. And they're not going to shut down, because it's more of a collaborative type thing versus like early on when I was manager, like, hey, these are the data, like, we need to make sure that patients are continuing on, and like going on my rant about how we need to help, like truly helping people is not getting them out of pain in three visits. It's much more than that. Now it's more, I take a more collaborative approach, because people don't shut down, and they're open to have more of a conversation about it. So that's how I would go about having that initial conversation, Dave.
Love it. Got it. You know what's wild is like, this is a little bit of an older screenshot. I can't recall when I snapped it. Because by the time I sent it to you over, I don't know, maybe a month or so recently, but like not that recently, this was a little bit older. And now that I'm thinking, I'm counting up the months, even though like I think this was kind of around like an 8-month mark, like maybe like 8 to 10 months. So like, here's the funny thing, right? This is a beautiful thing of recording this and putting this out there. But like, this is the type of stuff that you and I talk to other friends and colleagues and business owners about. And like, so if I bounce this off you privately, you'd be like, yeah, like all of our therapists kind of, sometimes many of them hit a lull around like the 3 to 8th month mark. Right. So now I'm just like, like I can have a little solace in the fact that like, I'm not like on an island here, like that this is somewhat common. Sometimes this happens.
Yeah. 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 It's all about like prevention. Like now it's getting less and less for us, because we know, like we set that expectation. Like, hey, you're probably going to crush it these first 2 or 3 months. Don't get away from what works. We see this all the time, that people go in for whatever reason, they hit that 4 or 8th month mark, and then they start getting away from what's working. And then then they establish bad habits. And then we got to work out those bad habits. Right. And it takes a lot of energy to get there. Let's just prevent that from happening. Right. So that's a big thing, that we start setting that expectation with people onboarding, to try and prevent that from occurring. And then when it does happen, if and when it does happen, now when we try and give them advice, it lands harder, because we already predicted it. It's kind of like if you're working with a patient and you tell them not to do something, and then they go do it, and they come back and they tell you what's going on. Now you look like a genius, because you predicted it, right? And so when you tell them, okay, this is the plan going forward, they're more likely to take your advice because you already built up that proof that you know what you're talking about, right? So if it does happen with the PTs and they do go through that wall, they're more likely to take your advice on how to get out of it because you told them that's exactly what was going to happen.
And of course, they'll trust you and the company and the practice more because you guys are seasoned. You already mentioned potential headwinds and challenges in the future before it ever occurred. And then once it does, they'll probably be maybe your staff therapist will be a little less embarrassed or less frustrated because they're in the same boat as your other therapists that came before them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They don't feel as much pressure, right? They're like, that's the thing too, is people this can spiral really fast because their confidence takes a hit and now their confidence is low and now it's even worse, right? So if you can preface like that, they're not alone before it happens. It goes a long ways too. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Another sidebar of this in terms of when I was originally trying to diagnose or identify or target what was going on. Another thing is that in the beginning of this therapist starting, a lot of the patient, like the therapist took over a lot of my existing patients or past patients that we reactivated, or the sons or daughters or the spouses or other family members of my previous patients that I saw back in 2017, 18, 19, or like the COVID years. And so my original gut was these patients are already warmed up. They were already treated by me directly or indirectly, or I had sold them over the phone and then some other therapist saw them or whatever over the previous 6 to 12 months or the previous years. And so my gut, it could be correct. It could be correct. It could be incorrect. But the initial positive momentum I thought was, well, because these patients were already warmed up, I saw and treated many of them already in person, and I had already kind of sold them on what we do and demonstrated value and all of that and communicated it as well as most practice owners would. And then later, I was out of patient care, and all of these new evals were either referred patients or cold leads from Google ads or whatever. So they were brand new to us. I thought that was also, and it still could be potentially part of the challenge, is that also the therapist might not have been trained or coached well enough by me, because I always want to, obviously, as practice owners, we want to step up and own it and take as much responsibility as possible. And so was there other things that I should have done to have a little bit better coaching and mentorship? I mean, in the beginning with a new therapist starting, we're talking with them, we're having way more higher frequency cadence of calls and meetings and all that. And then as they get busier, then it's like, eventually goes down to like once a week, like a one-on-one meeting once a week. And so later, as you see a lot of more of these reds in terms of like drop-offs and not acceptable and incomplete plans of care, a lot of those, like I said, those patients there was no previous history with us. They were brand new. They had never had family members or friends or anyone treated with us before. And so then their complete understanding of what we do and the value and all that was directly a little bit from us on the front end, but then more so when that therapist was going there and treating. And so that was, again, that's just something else in the mix that, like, now you have cold leads that are not existing patients. So of course they're going to be a little bit more challenging. They might be a little bit more skeptical. They might have, been jaded by other healthcare providers or whatever it might be. And so those are some of the other factors in the mix here, I thought.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's all about setting expectations with these patients as well. And that's a big thing that I also communicate with RPTs. I'm going to state it in more of like a clinic owner role, because that's the listeners. But I pretty much tell them that our physical therapy for us is not actually our offer. It's our front end offer. It's not physical therapy is not what we do. I essentially tell them there's no reason that anybody should ever stop working with us. Not because they need us, and are relying on us like through manual therapy, but because we challenge them to level up their goals and become better versions of themselves. For example, this is like a life cycle of a patient within ProKinetics that I tell a story of for our PTs that are onboarding so they can get a better understanding. But usually with traditional PT, everywhere else they've worked and what's been preached throughout PT school is, we help people get out of pain. And once they're out of pain, hopefully they don't ever need us again. We do it a completely different approach. The physical therapy that we do is just our front end offer. So a patient will come in, they'll call us, but hey, haven't been able to run for 6 months. I'm having some knee pain. I want to get back to running. And like, great. We'll get you in. We do an eval. We walk them through our 3-step process of what we do with each patient. And so our first phase is we obviously want to get them out of pain. Like that's what all physical therapy clinics do. But the second phase is really address the root issue. Like, why did this happen? And then let's prevent it. And then third phase is to help them level up. So patients get done with PT and towards the end of the plan of care and they're back to running their mileage that they want to. And we ask them, hey, now your body clearly has the capacity to be able to run. Have you ever thought about doing like half marathon or a marathon? Like, yeah, I've thought about it, but when I reached out to you, I didn't even think it was a possibility because I didn't even know if I was gonna be able to get back to running again. And so when they're towards their end of the plan of care and they realize that, hey, this is possible. Now we leveled up. Great. Why don't we work towards that? Yeah. They're like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'm like, okay, great. Your homework is to go find a race that you want to do and come back with 2 or 3 races that you want to do. And then we'll game plan for that. So now they're done with their formal plan of care. Now they're coming in on a monthly basis to help level up and train for that half marathon or that 10K, right? So that's the thing is like, we don't do physical therapy. Like that's our front end offer. What we actually really do is create life-changing results for people. And that is by helping them do that half marathon that they always wanted to, be able to live a healthier and happier life by being able to do the activities they love, not just getting people out of pain. If you want to get out of pain, you can go get a massage. You can go to chiropractor. You can go to, traditional PT. They can do that too. So Ms. Smith, or I tell them like the PT that we're talking to, Ms. Smith, the reason we hired you is because we feel like you can fit into our model of being much more than just pain relief and what we do with X, Y, and Z, right? So that's the thing too, is like, I tell people there's no situation that a patient should never, ever end care with us. If they do, in my opinion, it's us being lazy and not challenging the patient, and how to be a better individual from a healthy life cycle standpoint. So that's how I also educate. It's changing the mindset of PTs, because all we've been taught throughout PT school and other roles they've been in, get people out of pain as fast as possible. We're a great PT. No. If that's all you're doing is getting people out of pain as a physical therapist, in my opinion, you've really missed the mark, and you can help people a lot more than just that with your skill set.
Man, I want to talk about this more in the brief time that we have remaining. So I had a therapist fairly recently also say, so I told a therapist that I'm basically out of patient care. I have this one client I tried to move over, but they wanted to stick with me. And I'm like, all right, I'll continue with this client for now. And I said, I've been treating this client for like a year and a half. And the therapist was like, oh, so like he doesn't get better, or, so they're not getting better. And I'm like, no, like I'm doing what you just said, which is like, we're always setting new goals, like whether it's fitness related, travel related, like some of our clients, like whether it's business travel, leisurely travel, walking their dog in the park, races, competitive, events and things like that. There's always, maybe it's not for everyone, but there's always a lot of these motivated individuals, at least that reach out to us, that work with us, that it starts with that, like you said, the front end offer, it starts with like that episodic plan of care, the back pain, whatever the joint pain, the injury, whatever it might be. And then by just presenting like, hey, what are some other things you want to work on? Or what are some, future pacing things that you have ever considered or want to work on? And then, if you want to do that, we have a plan, or we can continue, monthly visit check-ins or whatever it might be. What do you say to candidates that you're either interviewing or your existing therapists that have pushed back because that's all we've always been taught about? We are supposed to treat injuries and acute pain and things like that. Do you get any pushback from candidates or existing therapists that have an issue with some of those clients that want to stick with you guys like indefinitely? Like they just want to evaluate and treat new injuries and acute situations and getting those folks just back to their baseline and then kind of just like churning through that like that, because that's what they figure their job and their role would be, or what? Have you had any of those challenges with therapists or candidates?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite questions I ask during interviews is, how long or how many sessions do you think a patient would benefit from working with you? I want to get their insight. I don't want to give them the answer. Like, I don't bring it up. Like, I don't bring up like our philosophies or anything. I want to know what is their baseline beliefs in themselves. So I try and ask that question before any of that pops up. Right. Because if I give my answer, like if they like, well, what's your guys' philosophy? Like how you treat patients? I try and get asked this question long before that because they already know what the right answer is. And so they're going to give me the right answer, even though if that's not what they actually believe in. So I try and really bump this question up before any of that comes up. So I can really see what their baseline belief system is. Another question I like to ask is how much is too much to pay for PT, right? So that's really good ways to get into the minds of your candidates and be able to differentiate if this person is going to be the long-term fit. And I'm very upfront with our candidates. I'm like, hey, I'll be completely transparent with you. If all you want to do, I shouldn't just say all, but if you just want to be a traditional physical therapist where you're just getting people out of pain, this probably isn't the right fit for you. However, if you really want to create life-changing results for patients and help them level up and continue to work with them on performance and fitness and health-related goals, we're the right fit for you, right? So I'm actually trying to push away those candidates. I'm trying to be polarizing in that aspect because it's going to attract the right people and retract the people that are not the good fit. And I'm not going to have a whole bunch of issues with onboarding them and continued ongoing coaching if they don't really actually believe in what we do.
Love it. Without obviously anonymously, without mentioning any names or timelines or anything like that, when you've had candidates in general, do they usually say, so for the how long do you believe it would, well, I forget how you phrase the question, how long do you believe it would benefit the client from potentially working with you? Do they usually say 10 visits, 15 visits? Do they usually say like a month or two? Or do some candidates say, indefinitely or lifetime client, or is it like somewhere in between, or they say like it depends, or like what's like an average response?
Yeah, I'd say that the response I'm looking for is I think patients could always benefit from working with me in one way or another. That's what I'm looking for, right? That also shows me a lot of confidence. I'm also analyzing their confidence, right? Because that if you're not confident and you're pitching a $2,000 package, patients are going to sense that. So I'm also analyzing their confidence, and I see that their confidence is directly correlated to their answer on this. Same thing with how much is to pay for PT. However, that's very few people actually respond that way, right? The candidate if they answer this way, I'm like, this is going to be a really rough road. Like, well, it just depends on how, when able to get them out of pain, like maybe if it's an ankle, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, if it's, and they start getting more technical, like on the injury and stuff like that. It's pretty much all pain related type situation. That's the red flag that I'm looking for. And I actually want to tease this out. Like, it sucks when you're interviewing people, especially because it's so hard to hire in today's age. And you're just like rooting for them. Silently, you're rooting for them because it's just work, right? But you don't want to move forward with the wrong fit too. And so you want to really tease it out. So I get like scenario based or like, oh, it depends, stuff like that. But what I'm looking for is like indefinitely, but I very rarely get that answer. But I'm looking for something that I can see that there's some wheels turning on their ability to be confident and that they can help people more than just getting on pain.
Got it. And then the other one was price. Do they now, of course, with 2 of your clinics being California, a little bit higher cost of living versus Des Moines or some other Midwest areas, do they usually say $100 a visit, $200 a visit? Do they say a couple thousand? Do they like what's like either an interesting anecdote response you've heard or like the average like consensus of like what candidates say about how they answer that question?
So I'll give you my ideal answer. I've always wanted somebody here. I've only gotten it once. What I want to hear is like I'd clarify it for traditional PT or like how ProConnect does physical therapy. And I'd like both. So then they'd say like, well, traditional PT, probably a copay, right? It's garbage. For the way physical therapy is done at ProKinetics, it's invaluable. What's being able to get back to play with you?
You're like hired. Oh yeah, we're skipping everything else. No reference checks. You're hired.
I'd hire them on the spot. Like they're like, yeah, it's invaluable to be able to be able to throw the baseball in the backyard with my son. What's the price tag on that? What's the price tag of being able to finish a marathon that you've been training for with your friends for years? Right, invaluable. Right, that's the thing. So for that, I can't put a price tag on that but for traditional PT, where you're getting treated by aides or assistants instead of PT, just getting out of pain, maybe a copay. That's the answer I'm looking for. I've only gotten somewhat close to that answer with one candidate. But what I'm looking for, to be fair with them, is something that's more than $200 per visit, or it's invaluable. That's what I'm looking for. If somebody's like, $50 maybe, 75, red flag. Going to be a really uphill battle with that. So that's another correlation that's directly correlated to their value and their confidence in themselves.
Love it. Well, we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, really around like presenting the plan of care, getting buy-in, building on a therapeutic alliance with our patients and clients. And we kind of segued into some awesome stuff that I always love to talk about in terms of like, candidate and therapist interviewing and questions and all that. Any other things that we jumped over, skipped over, glossed over? Do you want to recap or anything else just to fill in the gaps before we wrap up?
One thing, I like giving tactical advice. One thing that's tactical that we've done in the last year and a half that's a game changer is we've actually updated our evaluation template. So there's actually a checklist of all the things that they need to do from a sales perspective and communication perspective and motivational interviewing perspective. There's 30 different check boxes, right? First one's like, be there at the front. Like for us, it's brick and mortar, but for us, it's like be at the front, greeting them with a smile, shake their hand when they walk in. Simple as that. All the way through like, hey, what questions to ask about through the subjective with regards to motivational interviewing, all the way to the pitch. Like, this is how you should do the pitch. Did you tell a story of somebody else that you've worked with? Did you go through our 3-step process and pull out our diagram of what the patient journey looks like so they have that expectation? So by doing all those things throughout the evaluation, it's going to increase the lifetime value and the continuity of the patient going forward. It's all about setting expectations. And so that's something I encourage all clinic owners to do, is have a template that they can check off and follow. Obviously, you don't want to have that like pulled up and like just glued to your screen when you're doing it, but it's there for a framework. And when you're doing coaching with people, it's a great framework to know where to focus on. Instead of like you meet with somebody that's struggling, like you need to get better at sales. That doesn't do anybody any good. But what I can do is I can go back and like, okay, what are boxes that are consistently not being checked or overlooked? And usually it's because they don't know how to ask the question in a way that feels comfortable to them. And so you can do role playing on those specific boxes that are not checked versus like giving them tips and tricks on things that they're already doing well on, but you don't know it because you don't know what's actually being said throughout the assessment. So that checkbox and evaluation template checklist gives me a glimpse into what's being said, what's not being said, what's being missed, what's being hit really well. So I can make my coaching much more effective and efficient with a PT, whether they're struggling or not. So that's something I really encourage everybody to do, to be able to get a glimpse into how the sessions are going.
I love that. I know you sent me over the PDF of the checklist, maybe in the past 6 or so months. And but I think it was like 20 or something like that. So maybe you guys have expanded it, got a little bit more granular with it.
Yeah, it's between 20 and 30. I'll have to look back at it. But yeah, somewhere between 20 and 30 checklist. Yeah.
I love it. Any therapists revolt against that? Any of them still trying to like do it like on the fly, off the cuff? Or do you pretty much have solid buy-in across your therapist with that, with the evaluation checklist, with like a lot of the, either all the steps or like the majority of them for most part?
Yeah, we have to work out the kinks. Like anytime that you implement something new with PTs that have already been working in your systems, there's always a little more pushback, right? Not pushback. It's just, they weren't pushing back against it. It's just adopting a new way of doing things. It takes time, right? So some PTs grasped it really quickly. Some it took longer, more reminders. They're all there now, but you are just going to have different personalities and different individuals. They didn't get pushback. They all thought it was a great idea and they didn't see anything wrong with it. It's just anytime you adopt something new, it takes time, but now everybody's cruising with it and doing well with it.
Awesome. Got it. Anyone watching, listening, go check out Clinical Marketer, check out ProKinetics, connect with Dr. Ben Bagge on Instagram, Facebook, Jordan Mather on Facebook and Instagram. Any other place for the audience to connect with you? You guys have Clinical Marketer on YouTube, wherever else you guys are focusing on right now?
Yeah, you can find us anywhere and everywhere. We've got our podcast. We've got YouTube page. So you can just search Clinical Marketer. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Ben Bagge. Try and provide value there and give you guys insight into my life, what's working within ProKinetics on a daily basis. I try and share at least weekly, sometimes daily updates on what's working within ProKinetics, what's not, how we're going about different problems, how we're solving it. So I can get a glimpse into more day-to-day and more immediate type things. But you can also find us on YouTube and podcast too.
Awesome. Dr. Ben Bagge, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.